Hey, Kevin, thank you so much for joining me in this conversation. I want to talk about Uchi and the Uchi app. I have conversations with parents all the time on the Question Guy podcast. And a lot of times, parents have difficulty relating to their children, especially when children get older, like the teenage years and into early adulthood. There seems to be a growing disconnect between a parent's influence and just generally engagement with their own children. And I'm a parent of a 13-year-old, and I know all about that. You've told me about the Uchi app and how well it works in other scenarios. Can you talk to me about how well it would work to help close or embrace or improve the relationship between a parent and a child?
Yeah, absolutely, Keith. Thanks for asking me that question. I am more than happy to talk about Uchi for families or friends and families. Interestingly enough, the Uchi idea first originated because I witnessed an argument between a father and his teenage daughter, and they were just butting heads and butting heads. And I'm thinking to myself, if you both would just share how you really feel or how you really think, you would have no conflict. And that's how the idea originally started for Uchi. And Uchi was originally designed for families with teenagers, parents with teenage kids. Um, so what I had originally thought was, it's so much easier to write your thoughts and feelings and ideas and perspective than to say them verbally most often. And because in a conversation, when you're trying to think in real time, and how often do we say exactly what we want to say at the exact time we have the chance to say it, in that moment with everything else going on and all the emotions running high, it's really difficult, right? So I thought, well, parents and kids can just write emails to each other, but how many parents and kids who live under the same roof are going to open up a little blank email window and write back and forth? And what are they going to write on? Right? A blank screen is like, what do I do with that? So that's how Uchi really got started is what if we could ask just some simple questions that everyone answers, and then we get to share those answers with only your Uchi, your in-group, your family, right? And everyone has to share their answer because the two main rules on Uchi are only your Uchi friends can read your answers, and they can only read your answer if they've already answered that question. So you have to contribute in order to consume. So how often does a child come home from school and they're basically interrogated by their parent, right? It's like, how was school? What'd you do? What's your homework? How'd you do on your test? Are there any permission slips to sign? What's going on? Who'd you hang out with afterwards? I mean, it's like a barrage of questions where I understand the parent is just trying to connect and be involved, but the kid feels like it's an assault, right? Remember back to when you were a kid or a teenager getting bombarded with those questions. And oh, by the way, when does the parent ever answer that barrage of questions? We think kids don't want to know about it, but all the research shows that kids do want to know what's going on in their parents' lives. And parents are still struggling with this idea, this false belief that they have to be perfect in their kids' eyes. And that is just a complete false belief. Nobody's perfect. Parents aren't perfect. Kids aren't perfect. Let's all just embrace the imperfection and connect. And that's what Uchi's all about. So it's just simply answering questions that are, I call it personal, but not private. The questions don't have any like agenda, like political or religious, or there's nothing like that, but they're personal, which could be what's your favorite color, right? Because that's personal to you, your answer, and my answer is personal to me, but it's not such a private topic that I wouldn't want to share that with my parent or family member or close friend. And so that's what Uchi's all about. It's a free platform where you just get on, you answer questions that are free in our database. And just by starting to answer questions and leveling the playing field so that everyone is answering the same questions, or you can't read someone's answer if you didn't already answer it. And these questions are meant to be just below surface level questions, right? It's not questions about like, how's the weather today? Or What did you see the sports game last night? What'd you think of the game? That's not tends to not really be connection. But things like, one of the most popular questions is look outside your window and describe what you see. Whoever thinks about that kind of thing? Or if you could change and redesign your room in any way, what would you do? How would you change it? It's just these kinds of get to know you questions. You can think of them as icebreaker, but it's a little bit more than just icebreaker. And again, it's with the people that you already know and love and care for, but have struggled to really connect with. And what's so powerful about the asynchronicity, so it's not done in real time, the asynchronicity of answering questions and reading your family members' answers, it really gives you time to think about, like, God, let me look outside my window and what do I see and how does that make me feel? And those are some of the follow-up questions. It really gives you time to slow down and think about your world and think about you in your world. And then what I have found and what a lot of other people find is when it's only the written word, because Uchi does not have pictures, no video, no audio, no like buttons or anything like that. It's only the written word. And when you have a chance to read your family members or your friends' answers, you can slow it down. So people tend to become much better listeners when they're reading a family member's answer. And that's really one of the best aspects of Uchi, is that we become better listeners. And when we're better listeners and the other people that we're using it with become better listeners to us, then we feel heard. We feel understood. And when we feel heard and understood, we feel like we matter. And when we feel like we matter, we feel like we are valuable. We're worth listening to. Our ideas, our thoughts, our feelings, our perspectives are important to someone who's important to me. And that actually helps us feel loved. It helps us feel valued, which translates to feeling loved. And feeling loved is a basic human need. Now, I believe all parents unconditionally love their children, but that's not the message that children are receiving. You can tell them I love you over and over and over again, and maybe it'll get through, but you can show them by listening. And Uchi helps you really listen, and it's two-way. That's why Uchi is so powerful. And I'll just finish with years ago, a father wrote in and he said, thank you so much for this platform. My 12-year-old daughter has not spoken to my ex-wife in more than a year. And within a week of using your platform, they started talking again. That's the power of Uchi.